Joining us today. I'm Jackie Kibler. I am an EOS implementer based in Glendale, California. I work with the Chamber quite a bit and absolutely love working with them. So my background, I've spent about 30 years working with leadership, whether it's CEOs or other leadership teams, and I've spent time with Dun & Bradstreet, grew through the ranks, Wells Fargo, Corporate Executive Board, and then was recruited to Vistage Worldwide, which is where I found EOS, and had the ability to meet Frank, and absolutely love doing it. Frank, I'll turn it over to you.
I am Frank Girardi, and I'll admit to it, this is my 5th recession. Just shows you how old I am. So my background, 20 years in the chemical industry my last 6 years I was involved in building a division to 45 million as part of the management team. And then I left that industry and got into that's when I realized I was an entrepreneur. And as part of an entrepreneur, I bought my own company, grew it. And we had about 100 people, and I was able to exit the business. And as part of the exit, I took some time because I had developed some health issues, and I did some early revenue startups and started doing turnarounds. And I've now been involved with I've done 4 turnarounds since then. And in December 2015, I got requested to be a COO of a company, a gun storage company in Syracuse, New York. I joined them, and we had it turned around in a year. And then in December in 2000, I think it was late 2017, I got exposed to EOS and decided that I was going to become an EOS implementer. And when I moved out west, so I recently just moved to Coeur d'Alene. And I'll travel to California, and feel free once we get through this, if you have any questions, just reach out to either through Jackie or myself. And that's my story.
Awesome. Okay, so just to give you a brief agenda. So we just did introductions. We're going to talk about 3 areas within leadership. First is mindset, really breaking through this crisis that we're in and getting ahead. Revenue, cash flow drivers, and contingency plans. And then if there's time, we'll do the reverse accountability chart. We do want to try to have questions in between each section. So if that works, Nancy, we could do that. If there's questions at the end, we'll take them then, and then we'll do a quick closing. And we are both really excited to be here. Here's our contact information, which the Chamber has, and they will forward it to you if you have questions after you hang up. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure everyone knew about is, both Frank and I are professional EOS implementers. And I just want to talk really quickly about what that is, because many people don't know what EOS is. And if we're implementers, you're not quite sure. So what we do is we work with entrepreneurial companies to help them in 3 different ways. It's through Vision, Traction, and Healthy. I'm lucky enough to have the San Fernando Valley Chamber as one of my clients. And really for Vision, it's just getting everyone in your organization 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there. Traction is really all about execution. So it fosters accountability and really helps people to drive towards where you're going. And if you can imagine, when everybody is going in the same direction, doing what they need to do, you're becoming a healthier organization, not just throughout the leadership team, but throughout the entire company, and becoming more healthy and profitable. So the first part of our section is mindset. And as we were going through how we were going to present today, I looked through several different areas that talked about mindset. And the first one that really popped out was one by Dan Sullivan with Strategic Coach, who I'll share who he is in a minute. But really, it's Scary Time Success Strategies. And the cool thing is, with this, Nancy and her team have the documents and the tools associated with this. And when we're done, they'll be able to send those out to you so you can do this for yourself, your team, anyone in your organization. So what is Strategic Coach and Dan Sullivan? So they actually are a partner and ally with EOS. We sponsor each other's events. We cross-refer, all that good stuff. He is the recognized leader in entrepreneurial coaching worldwide, and literally started the company about 30 years ago, and works with the CEOs of those companies to help them be stronger, better, faster. We right now, and Nancy pointed out this earlier, is, we are in the middle of a crisis. We all know this. We turn on the news and it's just going on and on and on and on. But each of us have gone through crisis in the past and learned from them. Oh, and I just put a bunch up here. I won't read through them all, and I'm sure there's some that I didn't put up there that you've lived through. And the leaders that do the best are those that don't act 100% reactionary, but they actually are thinking positively, trying to think creatively, and trying to build workarounds in order to help them grow or maintain or not lose their business, depending on what industry you're in. Right now, more than ever, people are relying on you. And the one thing that I've found, and Frank as well, Yale West is founded on this, is that entrepreneurs and what we call visionaries are really the first people to rebound from crisis. They almost reinvent themselves. They're resilient. And people right now that are working with you and reporting to you really need you to double down on those efforts, because it's important that you're doing this now more than ever. I mean, COVID is something that's new. A lot of the things that we're doing are really first time for the United States and the globe as a whole. So Dan has 10 areas, and I'm going to go through them relatively quickly because we've got a lot of content to share. But again, Nancy and the Chamber of Commerce have the actual documentation for you that can walk you through each one in detail. But it's how to be more strategic in turbulent times, how to try to turn yourself around, and really you can think about not only yourself, but people you work with, people that you know, and you'll be able to relate these strategic ways to do business or way to live your life, on a more holistic perspective. Those that focus on others versus in the beginning, we all seem so isolated. When you're focusing on others, it helps you to really help drive them grow their business, their lives, personally and professionally. And in doing so helps you help yourself as well. Focusing on relationships versus a commodity, because as you're reaching out to your vendors, your clients, your employees, and focusing on deepening those relationships, you're going to sell your commodity or your service because people are going to remember who you are. You're creating value versus focusing on the sale. I've heard a lot of people on all these million Zoom calls that we're on where people talk about those that are trying to sell like they always did, almost being tone deaf. But if you're creating value that relates back to where an issue lies, particularly in the short term, it helps grow miles, and those sales will come. All of us right now have opportunities where perhaps if we're creative, we can drive our business. And I'll give you an example of this one just from one of the clients that I have with EOS. They are a event space in Southern California. And obviously event spaces probably won't be reopening for a long time. And what this gentleman did is he reached out to his vendors and said, hey, I want to be able to do something to help the community. He opened up every Friday a soup kitchen out of his event space. So every Friday people are coming and getting soup. He uses it for a different way on Saturdays, but still an effort to help the town that he lives in. And it has gone miles. When this is done, people are going to remember how he helped that community. That's an opportunity. He could focus on the fact that, right now he's one of the last one most likely to open, but he's not doing that. Focus on your progress versus difficulties. Focus on today. What can you do in the next 24 hours? Because right now, the future, we hear that we're going to be opening on May 15th. That'll probably be pushed. We're not sure when we're actually going to be opening. So what is it that you can do to help yourself, your business, your people, and your community within the next 24 hours? focus on who you can be versus who you were. I'll give you one more example and then I'm going to go through the rest relatively quickly. So there is a restaurant chain, just a local restaurant chain. They're very white tablecloth, and they obviously were having some serious issues. The upcoming CEO decided, hey, we're going to be able to box this up and have it almost as curbside pickup / drive-through, even though we're not known for that and people don't know our food for that. In the most downward month, you know, for him, which really at the beginning was March, he had the ability to do $150,000 that month just from one store. It's being creative. What can you do? Focus on your responses versus any event that comes up. Forget about what's missing, focus on what's available, and focus on gratitude. You know, complaints begets negativity. When you're focusing on what you actually have and the gratitude that you have for the people surrounding you, it will pay in dividends. So again, Nancy and the Chamber of Commerce have the documentation. It's all through Strategic Coach and Dan Sullivan, a great way for you to take a look at what you can do personally. And it gives you some time to think. She's also going to send to you a exercise, and I'll walk you through this relatively quickly. But what the exercise is, it is the first part, looking back through your career. And if you're an entrepreneurial company, then that's great, entrepreneur, but everyone has gone through scary times, whether it's in business or whether it's personal. So on this template, I'm going to have you write down what the 5 scariest times were and add a date to them, or an approximate date if you don't know exactly what they were. What was the biggest lesson that came out of that time? And then you're going to ask yourself, how did you get better from experiencing that time? And if you can see as I'm going through this, you'll have aha moments in what you can do to ensure that you're better ahead than where you are today. Did you develop any new skills, any new opportunities? Is there a new way of doing business? Here is an example, and this is actually Dan Sullivan's. He did it last month. And I'll just go through the first one with you. His earliest childhood memory that was scary was that a fire destroyed his barn and a large greenhouse. They had no insurance, so they had to file for bankruptcy. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was there was no one who shared with him what they were going through, so he felt isolated. His new learning was he talks about what's going on from cradle to grave. What's working, what's not working. And his lifetime skill is made talking about positive and negative experiences a daily habit, both in business and personally. There's some discussion ideas down at the bottom that if you do this with your team, maybe you can have talks about it so you can help each other overcome their obstacles. This is the actual blank one that you'll be getting along with the completed version. And again, Nancy will be sending that out to you. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my counterpart in crime, Frank Girardi, for revenue. You're muted right now, Frank. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks. So nice job. And I just want to share with everybody that I probably am a little bit more nuts and bolts on how I do things, because that's the world I like to live in. And Dan Sullivan's work is incredible. And so I just really want to talk about a few things here. Just a simple thing about you as a business owner, cash, some stuff about your employees, your vendors, and making sure you communicate with everybody, and then a recession contingency plan, and then a your growth plan. And so as a business owner, you've really got to be the one that has the confidence that you're going to get through this, as hard as it is right now. And I'll say, to me, COVID was the thing that kicked us into it, is what's going to become a recession. It's not the principal driver. And you have to have, as Jackie mentioned, you're the one that has to have the vision that you're going to get through this and know that you're going to get through it. Clearly, there'll be times that you're scared. And I just had a conversation with one of my clients. He and I spent some time together, and he was like, Frank, I'm scared. How am I going to get through this? I was like, let's just, how will we get through it? So I'm here to help you. And so we talked about some ideas, and I can't go into it specifically what we talked about. And so everybody, your family, your customers, your employees, everybody is counting on you as the business owner. And I always use a duck analogy. And as the duck, think of a duck on the pond and on quiet water and how quiet the water looks, but you as the underneath the water, you're paddling along like crazy to just keep everything together. So just that's pretty normal, and just you got to learn to live with it. So cash preservation, and a lot of this comes from both my living through recessions, but it's probably as much working in when I do work with people on small business turnarounds. It's all about the lifeblood of business is cash, and you really have to know how much you've got, how do I get more, and lowering the cost to operate your business. And when I talk about specific I wasn't really gonna talk about specific examples, but I can. So let me talk about a couple things that you can, and the specific examples will be some of the things we do at the employee level, the vendor level, so on and so forth. And I'll go into that as we progress through here. I also want to let you know that you're going to be getting a 13-week cash flow tool that you can, it takes about an hour and a half to train a bookkeeper how to do it. And if anybody needs any help, I will gladly give me a call and I can walk somebody through it. So let's just go to the next slide. And so employees are, as everybody says, they're your greatest asset, but please appreciate they're only your greatest asset if those employees are in the right seats. And one thing I've always done is the employees need to know where you are, and you need to ask for their help. And so as part of that, I've always found it's amazing to me at any given time when we had 100 employees, if you need to cut people, you go and say, I've always found that people, you get 5 to 10% of your people at any given time that for whatever reason will take time off because they need it. They might be helping a family member. They might just want, it might be fishing season, it might be hunting season, but they'll take the time off voluntarily. And you might have to work with them a little bit in some kind of supplemental pay, but you can get a lot of help from your employees in that. And then I always believe that you ask your employees to brainstorm cost savings, because honestly, you think where all the money in the organization can be saved, but when you really task your employees, they probably have a lot of them have much better ideas than yourself. And then you prioritize them, and then the ones that you can do quickly and most get you the biggest bang for your buck, you put them in place pretty quickly. Now, please appreciate, you're always going to get the ones where people say we can use paper clips, or we can use paper clips as opposed to staples, and just realize that that's inconsequential. But the important thing there is that if people feel strongly about it, never make an issue of it and tell them that they're wrong and you don't want them to do it. Just say, yeah, just do it. Let's start doing that as an organization, and don't make a big deal of it. Very critical. My philosophy on reductions is you really need to be mindful that your employees know who is not performing in your organization, and absolutely critical that you deal with those situations prior to dealing with the rest of the organization, because you'll lose your team if you make it, you don't take care of the bad actors in your company. So that's my philosophy on that. And I'll just go to the next one. And I always, especially when you do turnarounds, it's absolutely critical. And turnarounds and recessions are the same thing. It's just when you're in a recession, everybody's in the same boat. So but in a turnaround, you might be the only one at the boat at that time. So you really have to, and you have to bucket your vendors. Must pay, do not pay, and should pay. So a must pay example is anything that can legally shut you down. You know, employees, you have to make payroll, your taxes. Now there is some stuff with the PPP. I don't know. I've heard some things over the last couple of days that you've got to be really mindful of. It's not a totally free check, is what I understand. I've got to learn more about it, and I've got a few conference calls over the next couple of days. And then you do have the do not pay bucket, and those are commodity suppliers that you can buy anything from anybody, and you can. So what is very common is you run up your payable to the one until they cut you off, and then you go to the other one, and then you start paying down the first one, and you just play that game of paying your vendors back and forth to get to you. And then there's the should pay category, and that's all your critical suppliers, the bank, and you just need, you need to have conversations with them, and they need to know what you're doing and how you might do it. And you just have to negotiate everything with them and make sure they're in agreement. Don't do it through your sales rep. You need to do that at the higher levels of the organization. It might be talking to their controller, might be talking to their CFO, might be talking to the president of the company, depending on who your critical vendor is. And just appreciate that it is very important that you over communicate in this, and you'll get so much more. They'll give you much more rope than you realize you have. So next slide, please. And this is this exercise should be done annually, whether you're in a recession or not. So every customer at all times should be in an excellent, and you bucket your customers, excellent, okay, and bad. And as hard as it is to kick a customer out that's bad in where we are, it's probably a good idea, maybe not to do it, but know that it needs to be done, and realize that at some point you should get rid of those bad customers. And then let's just go. Wasn't gonna say more about that. So at this point we are in a recession, and I call it contingency plan, but it is at this point, you should have the items that I just spoke about addressed, and have them laid out in a way that, and you use metrics as a trigger point of what you, and if you don't have metrics, because small businesses don't always run on metrics, they tend to run on gut, you probably just need to use dates then. And then scenario test if you're going to have reductions in sales, because I don't, honestly, myself, when you look at what's happened with oil now, this is not going to be an easy recession to get through. Everybody is being optimistic, which is good, but the reality, I'll be conservative and say it's going to be longer than we think. And so you just need to do scenario testing and just say, okay, this is what it's going to look like if I'm at 10% reduction, 20%, 50% reduction in sales, and just lay out the plan, make sure you've got it laid out. And then, because you're a small business, I would just say execute the first level, whether you're there or not, based on how your targets are, because you've waited too long already if you haven't made the changes in your business that should have been done a year ago because the economy was good. So just get it done, get that part of it done immediately, and then just follow the plan from there. So the next thing is, once you know you're going to survive, you really need to start having a growth plan. And the growth plan is you really, if you can just scroll through that, that'd be helpful for me. So the growth plan is, and this is really key. Once you know you're going to survive, I think I've already said that, it's really to build the plan of how you're going to grow. And because most companies will not have a plan, they'll react to which way the wind is blowing. And there'll be plenty of opportunities for the survivors. And then it's a matter of when you're confident that you're going to get through it and you can see the path and you have the path that you're going to follow, that is when you reinvest in your business. Don't reinvest on the way down, because everybody's going to be asking you, your banks, your key suppliers are going to say, how much more money are you putting into this venture to save yourself? You have to fight that off. Just say, I'm going to get through it, and then I'm going to put my money back in, or however you have to sell that. That's a sales function. So, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jackie. You ready?
I am ready. Thank you for that. Actually, before we go on to the people component, which sort of ties into what Frank's discussion was about the reduction in sales or revenue, if there are any questions out there, we're open for questions. So I don't see anything in the Q&A box.
No Q&A yet.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to go on to the people component. And I'm going to give you a little scenario before I hop into what we're going to be talking about. So at EOS, with every client that we work with, we build out something called an accountability chart, which might resemble a little bit like an org chart, except it is really around the structure of the company first. Then we look at the tasks within each of the functional areas. And then finally, we add a person's name to it who would fit that, what we call seats. Normally, when I'm doing this with a client, I'm saying, okay, right now we're in April, but I want you to look 12, 24 months out. Where are the gaps? What needs to be filled in? Right now, because we're working through a crisis, we actually do this almost polar opposite. So we call this the reverse accountability chart. And before I start talking about what that really means, you'll see on this accountability chart, you'll see a very vanilla accountability chart, and there's some funky names in there. So some people have read Traction, which is what EOS is based off of, some haven't. But I'll go through what the areas are that are normal within a company from a very vanilla perspective. So the person who's most likely the CEO, they are what we call the visionary. So if you'll remember when I was in the beginning, I was talking about entrepreneurs and visionaries because we kind of look at them very similarly in a similar vein. A visionary is someone who's got the big ideas, 20 ideas going on all the time. They are big on culture. They're big on relationships. They're great at problem solving because their mind is always going. So that is someone that helps to lead an organization, but they're not the ones that are in the weeds. If you look at the block below that, you'll see what we call an integrator. They're sort of the glue within the organization. They hold everybody accountable, which is why you see that lead, manage, and accountability. That's everything from hiring to training to managing to firing and all the different components within that. Very detailed focus. They're more, they're on special projects. They get rid of barriers so all the people can reach the goals that they need to reach. And then again, the blocks beneath that, you've usually got someone who's in charge of sales and marketing, someone who's in charge of operations, and then someone who's in charge of finance. And again, very vanilla. When the San Fernando Valley Chamber of Commerce came to me, theirs looks very different than this very vanilla one, and all my clients look different. But what we do, so now that you see what it looks like, taking Frank's financial component, if you lost X amount of dollars or X amount of your business, how are you going to look at your business 30, 60, 90 days proactively? one thing Frank talked about is making sure that you had the right people in the right seat. So if you have somebody who's in charge of sales who is not doing a good job and we're in this type of a crisis, that's something that you have to look at in order from, not just from a cost savings perspective, but it's probably something that you should have looked at, you know, I don't know how long, a year ago, 2 years ago, however long you have this person in seat. So whatever you'd look at, normally now it's really escalated. So if I lost 10% of my sales or business, what do I need to do to change the structure of my company 30, 60, 90 days out? And literally you're going to go through that as almost a scenario-based environment where you're working with those that are on your executive leadership team to help determine where it's going to go. And it's not always with the people component. However, there are other options that you can look at. For example, and these are just things that some of my clients have done in other companies. I'm pretty big into Vistage, so I still speak with CEOs and some of the Vistage chairs on a regular basis. We talked about cutting an employee who probably shouldn't be working at your company, and a lot of entrepreneurial companies, they base things, to Frank's point, on gut. If I own my own company and I've got Joe, who I've known, you know, for the past 20 years, we've got a good relationship, he's a good guy, but he's not bringing in the sales, that's something you need to look at. Some companies, some of the larger companies have cut back on executive salaries. So maybe they're furloughed now, and when they come back, they're 10, 15, 20% lowered, which helped to save some of those frontline jobs. There are a lot of companies, that company that I was talking about, the restaurant chain, the CEO of that company had furloughed 600 people. And then there are a lot of companies that are laying off, but there's a commitment to rehire. And these are just, there's a lot of creative ways to do things. Frank talked about, you know, figuring out how to work with the vendors. How can you figure out where you can save or maximize the dollars that you have? And these are all just ways for you to maintain, not lose. And I mean, there are some companies that are growing in leaps and bounds that they didn't know that they could do. I'll give you an example, and then we'll go into Q&A. There is an attorney that is based really in the Inland Empire. She's a rainmaker. And because they are working from home, she found that she had some additional time. Her next door neighbor is a manufacturer, and one of the things he manufactures is face masks. So she and he were talking outside one day, and he said to her, "I've got all these masks. I hate making calls. I'm not a marketer." She, pretty good attorney, big attorney, she said, "I'll help you with that." She started calling into hospitals. And what the person told me yesterday on a presentation that I was giving is this lady is making $50,000 in a very short period of time selling to the hospitals. It's crazy when you think about when that creative mind and those creative juices start going, there's magic that can happen. Just take advantage of the time that you've got. Okay, so I'd like to open it up for questions and answers, because we've got some time for that.
Okay, let me open up the panel, and if you want, I could probably unmute everyone if people have questions.
Perfect.
So, or if anyone has a question, I just have to go through. I have to just hit unmute as I go.
Perfect.
So, if anyone has any questions, I'm unmuting a few people, and you can see that you're unmuted. So, Tina Wolf, she's actually a colleague from another chamber. Tina, you have a question.
Hi, first I want to thank all of you very much for holding this. Our staff meeting on Monday was discussing this, and then this opportunity came up, so I'm excited. We're a small rural community in North Carolina. Our population's around 48, 50,000. So we're looking, you know, you can imagine. Most of our businesses are small mom and pops. You know, you're looking at people that might do their accounting on a legal sheet still. So coming into and presenting these options for them. That's why I'm hoping to get those slides, because I'd like to put together a presentation, something like this, something very simple that I could bring to them and help them. So I mean, most of the people are looking for quick answers. How do you deal with people that are just not, you know, you've got a lot of solutions, but that creativity option, when there's someone is stuck in that negativity, they didn't get any PPP money, they didn't get any there's like 4 people in our community. So when you're dealing and approaching those people and trying to have a positive attitude, what are your take or your suggestions on keeping that conversation positive, bringing them from that focus of not getting the money to how can I be creative?
Great question. Frank, I'll let you chime in and then I'll say a couple things.
I think the first thing you have to do is they have to realize, and you have to realize, that it's not always easy. It's not always an easy conversation with them. And the reality of it is, if they might be too small and they may not really have options, but you just have to let them air out their feelings and listen before you react. But the reality is, there's going to be a lot of businesses that aren't going to get through this. As well as they are intentioned, and a lot of them are going to try to fight through it. Again, I'd have to know more about the specific business to comment on it. And by the way, if you would like us to do something, like, I'm going to volunteer you, Jackie, that we'll gladly do this presentation for you if you want to do it. If you can set up the technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, we're happy.
By the way, my kids were born in North Carolina, Charlotte.
Fabulous.
And Tina, we'll tell you more about our EOS experience as a chamber too, because I mean, it's not just for our chamber, it's how we're able to help our members through it. So we do have a question in the queue from Kathy McIntyre on the reverse chart.
Okay.
I am thinking that we are really doing ABC/lean and reduction of work that is not beneficial or redundant. Do you play in work share into these scenarios during this type of crisis such as COVID?
So I'll answer that, and then Frank, if you want to chime in, you can.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are in normal situations, we would say somebody has to own the responsibility. Having said that, what you would do, just because you own it doesn't mean that you can't work with somebody or delegate some of that responsibility. Some of the tasks are huge. And also, I feel like collaboration and cohesion right now is really important. So if Frank owned XYZ, but he needed a committee or people to help him with that, and I was doing it, even all the work that I'm doing, he's just held accountable to it. And then he makes sure that the proper kudos or yay, we're able to move past this are important.
So I'll just comment on the work share concept. I think if you can make that work, and I think in this economy, it's going to work for a lot of people, because that's a creative idea. Hopefully it came from your employees bucking up and say, hey, I'd like to go on, I'll work part-time if I can share with this, Harry over here, the 2 of us will work part-time. So I don't know the circumstances, but that sounds like it's working for you.
We don't have any other questions in the queue right now, but I just wanted to talk about a couple things while we're here, because a chamber's a business, and I don't think people always see us that way. They see us just as a nonprofit, and but that's just our tax status, and we face all the same things all of you face, whether it's loss of revenue, loss of our customers, my argument if we're essential business or not, because I think of us as businesses first responders. But I want to go back to some of the things that Frank and Jackie were talking about, because in February I attended a conference for Chambers of Commerce, and a couple of my colleagues presented it, and they were talking about the EOS entrepreneurial operating system. And this is not a selling thing. I'm just telling you how you can take some of these tools and use them, because when I went to college and I was still at the chamber, I did a whole paper on management by objective. And back in those days, it was TQM, management by objective. Now I think it's called Six Sigma. There's so many different things. And we were at a place, our team had talked about where we wanted to be. And we were just right here. We were like at this level of, we could just stay where we are, but I knew we had so many things we wanted to do, and I didn't know how to get there. I didn't even know where to start. We're a small office in a big area with 1.8 million people and 23 other chambers of commerce around us. How are we going to go from here to here with this much time? And I was like a sponge at this workshop because I understood it. And I get teary-eyed even thinking about how excited I was. And I couldn't wait to rush home and do this. That while I was there, I signed up on the EOS website for a free 90-minute workshop. And that's how we got Jackie. And I was ready to dive in. I didn't know if our team was ready to dive in with me. And we dove in and we had our first full day session 2 days before Mayor Garcetti shut down the city. So we left high. On Wednesday, we set up our accountability chart from a flip chart onto paper into the traction tools. And on Thursday, we thought life was still normal, and then everything changed. And by Friday, we were working from home. And so we've never really implemented this system the way it should be. And I know people are saying, what are you doing now? Like, that was one of the questions you just had from Kathy, kind of like, how do you work with this? And it's not easy. I mean, we're punting every single moment of the day. For us, if you get our emails, you see there's an action alert constantly because there's some legislation that we need you to weigh in on. Like people talked about the PPP, Payroll Protection Program. For those of you, and I'm going to give a plug right now, Chambers of Commerce aren't eligible for the PPP. They give it to nonprofits, 501c3s, which are charitable, and they also give it to veterans, but 501c6s, which are your chambers of commerce and your trade associations you may belong to, are not eligible. And yesterday it was talked about in the new stimulus package, and we were again omitted. So we're like, you know, we're still operating, and we're thankful that we have a reserve, but like all of you, how far can that reserve last? So this is really uncertain times, even for our chamber. And as far as I'm concerned, we're going to keep on plowing through because that's who I am. I go by fear of failure. I don't want to fail. And I think that a lot of the tools that Frank was talking about too, I was looking at those going, I can't wait to print these out for us to, I looked at the thing about the paying the bills. I took a workshop years ago. It was called the Financial Stress Reduction Workshop. And she had a whole thing about to organize your day of what brings in money now, what brings in money later, and what other people can do. And when I'm at my toughest times and I don't know what to do, it's focused on what brings in money now. And I know for all of us, we probably don't even know what brings in money now. And so now it's like, how can we find money? I mean, I can't grow it, I can't print it, but I still kind of use those as some of my priorities. And I just wanted to throw that out in case someone wants to discuss how organizing your day, as ominous as this sounds, what Jackie and Frank are talking about, can actually give you some peace in your heart and peace in your anxiety and everything. So I don't know if anyone wants to chime in and talk. You can raise your hand. I can make you eligible to speak. Or we're just gonna be quiet. How's anything?
Hi, Nancy. Hey, this is Artie.
Hey, Archie. Oh, by the way, Archie, I couldn't find you Elastic yesterday. Sorry. They were out. Try it.
So I have a question. I have the book Traction. I have read the book Traction 3 times. We're a small company, and I want to implement the EOS. Not looking for, well, I can take all the help I need from the implementer, but my question is, how large should the team be for it to work effectively?
So,
and I'm talking about the EOS, the EOS system.
Sure. So I'll start with this one. I have clients that have got like literally 5 people that work for the company. I've got some companies that are larger that have got 8 people on their executive team. I mean, I work with companies that have 1 or 2 on the executive team up to, you know, really the way it works is if you have anywhere between 5 and 600-700 employees, that 6-7 is a little high, but Those are the types of companies that we work with. But the majority of the companies that I'm with are not megla companies. And either of us are very happy to talk to you about that. So, and here's the thing, we believe in a help first model. So if you do want to reach out to one of us, we can have a quick conversation with you. We can give you a complimentary 90-minute meeting. And if it's something that can work for you, great. And if it's something you're like, hey, can you just give me some tools? Then we're both happy to give you the tools and templates to help you start. Most companies use an implementer because they get stuck when they're trying to implement it themselves. And they can only reach the ceiling of how they can do it. So that implementer opens things up. But we're
Absolutely.
And RT, we're we're a 3-4 person office, and we do it. And we were going to self-implement because that's what my chamber friends were doing. And I thought, but who's going to manage me?
Yeah.
And right. And so it was a big choice for us to go with an implementer full time. I know some people who just hire them for certain parts of the process, but someone's got to babysit me. So, I'm looking forward to when we get it going again, because we were literally Tuesday, Wednesday came back to the office Thursday. In fact, I just cleaned the bag off my table that we still had the meeting full of all of our snacks and everything. So,
So I would love to talk to you, Jackie, because so my company is Team Logic IT. We're an IT company. We're nationwide. There's 200 locations. I know there are many other Team Logic IT locations who have successfully implemented EOS, and that's what got me started into this. But yeah. I guess like Nancy, we're a small team, so we run into roadblocks, and I would just love to have somebody who I can reach out to. So I'll reach out to you.
Yeah. I'll put up the last slide. There's our contact information. Nancy has me and speed dial on her cell phone, so she can give you my phone number if you don't get this.
And just so you know, so Jackie's a member of the chamber too, and RT is the co-chair of our Women in Business Committee. And I believe she's on our ambassador committee.
Nice to meet you.
So now you've met some members. I got a couple questions in queue. I know Cindy's up with the questions. So let me first take the question that came into queue first. From Russell Lookadoo, do the presenters have a tool that helps business owners choose who to cut if needed?
Frank, I'll give that to you.
We don't actually have a specific tool, but I think if you have an accountability chart, that'll pretty well easily tell you who is not doing what they should be doing. So that is a tool that you can use. Just use the accountability chart, and or some of the basic stuff. If you don't have that, is you can use the classic things: who doesn't show up to work, who is always whining, who is your biggest problem in your business, who's not getting it done what you need to do. So short of not having an accountability chart, just go the old-fashioned things the way you were taught.
So,
Frank,
if I can add on to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in EOS, and I can send Nancy the tools to send out to you, or if you want to just talk to one of us, we're happy to do it. When we're doing an accountability chart and what's called a people analyzer with the executive teams that we're working with, it's amazing what comes out of it. Even if you're somewhere in your gut, if just like what Frank was saying, if there's something in your gut saying, well, this guy Joe was here, but I'm not sure if he's pulling his weight. If there's that, as we're building out what you want your company to look like, whether we're doing a reverse accountability chart or a future accountability chart, you'll be able to identify what that looks like. We take the subjectivity out of everything that we do. Everything turns very black and white. So all of a sudden you get these aha moments, both with the people analyzer, which is, whether this person believes in your core values, whether they're living and breathing what the company does, and then do they fit in the chart that you're looking at? So there's a lot of different ways to do that.
And I always want to add something on. I used to go to an executive roundtable, and one of the people in my class was a gentleman that owned a bank. His family owned a bank, and he was talking about sometimes kind of what Frank said. It's putting the right people in the right seats, and if you let go of the people who are dragging everyone down as a negativity or different things, your productivity will normally go up just because that other person's dragging you down. And in that book, Good to Great, it's all about getting the right people in the right seats on the bus. It's a big chamber thing for the Western Association of Chamber Executives. It's always about, who's driving the bus. And, that's part of it too, is making sure the right people are in. And the people I know who've done EOS, after they've done the accountability chart and gone through their staff, they've actually had staff think that either they're in the wrong positions or they're not the right people on the bus.
Right.
So some of these people discovered on their own. Cindy, did you have a question? Because you're popped up on my screen.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yesterday Garcetti said something about right to recall, and I went on the VICA site because I was trying to figure out if they implemented that.
By the way, that's on our site too, but okay.
Okay, because I tried to look real quick and I thought, well, I'll just ask tomorrow. Did anything go through on that, or is that still in discussion? I couldn't figure it out.
Council means today, and that's an ongoing thing. So I really didn't want to talk about politics because this is a webinar on helping people. So, but the right to recall is a motion before the city council that is going to require businesses to hire people back based on seniority. So not the right people in the right seats in the bus. And I don't want to get into who's behind it or anything like that, but they're trying to right now mainly do it for the hospitality industry because obviously that's one of the ones that are hurting the most. And they're trying to, right now, we've pushed it so it has to be employers of over five, because I'm on a coalition for it, of over 500 employees. We got it away from being 25 employees, but it's a bad motion. We sent out an action alert on that over a week ago and asked everyone to write letters. And it was a city council meeting that went on until 10 p.m. And this part came back. And so it's being heard today as we speak. It's probably not heard. It's on today's council meeting. So that's the status of it.
Yeah, that answers my question because I didn't know if that affected what we were talking about yet.
Well, it doesn't, it could, but I just want to tell people in LA this. If you read the motion, it looks like it's because of the pandemic. If the pandemic wasn't here, that the right to recall wouldn't be an issue, but it's actually using that in the language to make it a permanent issue for the city of Los Angeles. Basically, it's like trying to unionize your offices. So that's that. Okay, no more talking about politics. Thank you. Okay, we got another question, 2 questions from Linda. Do you ever start with the people/chart and then go to the mindset finance? Does order matter?
So I'm gonna just be totally transparent. We originally, when Nancy and I were talking about putting together a webinar for everybody, it was before the pandemic even happened. So we were gonna have a conversation about EOS. When the pandemic occurred and Nancy's like, hey, you know what, I need you to do something on recovery strategy planning, I brought Frank and we went into our archives of, the different things that we know from our past, or, a strategic coach, although it's paired with EOS, it's a big part of Vistage as well. So we took Frank's turnaround and we put that in for the cash flow drivers. And it's really just, it's an offer to help. The people component, that is the only part that is EOS. Obviously, there are different pieces that we'd be able to take, but the financial component just wrapped around cash flow drivers isn't necessarily a part of EOS. Frank, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you said it well, you said it well.
We put it together for Nancy and you and everybody on this call.
You find sometimes there is a make versus buy, outsourcing of some tasks, functions in this process. Well, we definitely outsource in our office. So.
Yes. I would say in almost every single client that I have, maybe with the exception of one, there's outsourced HR, there's outsourced marketing, outsourced the fractional CFOs. So yeah, 100%. We still put it in the accountability chart though, because you still have those expectations of the companies that you're working with. You have to have certain things done. So we still put it on the accountability chart and then we just put outsourced to XYZ.
Does anyone else have any questions before we could tell you some other things? I'm kind of looking through, see if I don't see anyone that's raised their hand. Oh, Tina? Are you asking?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I typed in a question. I guess it didn't get recognized. So my question was back to
Oh,
the,
you actually, you put it in the chat and I replied to
oh,
you. You said, does the company make your own accountability chart or do you do all that with the company? And I wrote back just saying, you do that with your implementer, you do it on your own.
okay.
And I offer, by the way, I have like a sample from, because you're a chamber, from another chamber that's how I met Jackie though. And then some cliff notes from Traction Tools, but Jackie could obviously tell you more.
Yeah. Absolutely. So
Thank
we
you. That's fabulous.
do it with
Who makes the accountability chart?
we do it with the companies that we're working with. So we have them take a step back, go like 50,000-foot view, and what do they want it to look like? We build it with them. And the interesting thing is, like with Nancy, that was before we were all not allowed to leave our homes. So I had her introduced to a partner that we work with called Traction Tools, and they help to import the information. The cool thing is now, and we work virtually with companies all the time, but now we're doing it a lot more because, you know, we can't leave the house. But
Yes, you can. It's safer at home. It doesn't mean you have to stay at home under any
I've got the chains on my hands. So anyway, what I do now is with the clients that I'm working with, I actually create the accountability chart with them right in Traction Tools as we're doing it. This way there isn't any double work.
Anyone else have a question? Okay, well, first of all, this is live on Facebook and it will also be on our YouTube channel later on today. And you will be getting homework. We'll be giving you a lot of information that's out there. I'm going to close with a couple things unless Jackie and Frank have something else to say.
No, just if you guys need anything, please let us know. We're both here. We're available and very happy to help.
And I know my team's on the call. I don't know if Eric or Fumi want to say anything about this art program or what's going on. No, they're muted.
Just that, you know, we're really here for you. So really, if there's anything that you need, please give us a call, shoot us an email. We're happy to help. There might be things out there we haven't thought of that we can help with. So please reach out to us.
Definitely. You know, whether it's a question about small business or a question that you need just directly for your business. You know, we're here to be your solution finder. Couple things. One, someone said, because everyone's talking about the whole safer at home versus never being able out of your house, which is not what they said. Because believe it or not, people could be three different things. You could be the people who take coronavirus seriously. You could also be the one who's worried about the expansion of authoritarian government policies. And you could also be the one who feels very concerned about the impending economic devastation. It's okay to be all three. You don't have to just be one, because so many times, because of social media, if we had social media during the Spanish flu of 1918, could you imagine how different that would be today? People feel all these different things at all times. And if you need to talk to us about any of your worries, about it, how it's going to affect you, feel free to reach out. And if you don't understand the Safer at Home ordinance or how it applies to your business, because we've had to do some clarification for some of our members and make sure that the city understood that they were an essential business, please give us a call. I told you that thing right there because I think people think I'm overly optimistic. And I am overly optimistic probably because I'm not like Frank. I'm not as old as Frank, but I've been through our earthquake. I've been through another recession that we've had before. And, I really believe that the United States was born out of optimism in our darkest times. And I also think that this could be our moment to shine. And the people who sit there and that are afraid to move forward are the ones who are going to have the most difficulty recovering from what's going on. I mean, it's always like, I went back to that financial stress reduction workshop. That was one of her things. Like, you had some big bills that you were ignoring, and your bill collectors, call them up and get it taken care of, because you'll feel better. You'll have a sense of relief. And I think that's where a lot of our optimism needs to come from, is the ability to have some control. And right now we don't feel like there's any control. And I do believe in hope, and I do believe in optimism. And I do think that there's going to be good things ahead. We are seeing, as a chamber, amazing creativity from our members. what they're doing to stay in business, what they're doing to revamp their business, just so they could be essential, or just so that they could even just help. And I think that's such an important thing for us to continue to do. I told you a little bit about our EOS story, but I just wanted to bring it up again, because the one thing that I loved about it, and no matter what program you use, whether it's EOS or whatever management program you can do, it made me feel like we weren't spinning out of control anymore, that we had a path forward. And even though that path right now is full of rocks and upheavaled roads, and every day Femi and I have a discussion about what we should be doing, and it never ends up that way at all. I really feel that if you can get control, and that's why we talked about this, you're going to have a better path forward for the future. And it reminds me of, I love that movie Apollo 13, Tom Hanks, but the real story of Apollo 13, talk about a disaster, right? I mean, people say, this is our Pearl Harbor moment. This could be our Apollo 13 moment, which that could have been like the worst disaster for NASA. And then Gene Kranz said, with all due respect, sir, I believe this is going to be our finest hour. And I think right now we could be in our finest hour, and I want all of you to move forward thinking about this in your finest hour. And thanks for being with us today. Don't forget, everyone, tomorrow is our Thirsty Thursday from 4 to 8 p.m. It's our networking opportunity. And tomorrow we are doing speed networking virtually. That means
I signed up for it.
well, we have no idea. We've never done that. We do for Thirsty Thursday, but we've never done the speed networking virtually. So come join us, members, non-members alike. And we're gonna do it together. On Mondays, we do our Member Monday, and that's just a members only event. We had a lot of fun this week. We did a within your reach scavenger hunt. So like staff would say, show your cell phone, and then you had to take a pile. Show your pajama bottoms, but we wanted you to stay wearing them, or something like that. And so, we've been trying to make it a little more interactive. And the thing I'm really excited about is Wednesday, April 29th, we're taking our network connection virtually. So our breakfast, we always pre-seat you. So we're going to put you in breakout rooms. Those breakout rooms are going to be just like the tables would be at the breakfast. We're following the exact same format minus the bacon buffet. So it's bring your own bacon. We haven't quite figured out how to do raffle prizes and stuff like that yet, but we're still going to have a friend of the our sponsor, that is, and that's Larry Cohen from Bel Air Exteriors. And Fumi, we have a front of the room speaker still too, correct? I'm assuming she's going to unmute and say yes. Well, we do.
Yes.
So, at our last breakfast, which was in April, because we canceled February, we drew for a front of the room speaker, which means that they get to speak too. So that person's going to get to speak. Everything's going to be the same. And this month it's free. So normally if you come to the breakfast, you pay $25, and then we sell you raffle tickets, and you get an amazing buffet, and then we have amazing networking. And this time, totally no cost. Sign up for it. Everything's on our website at sanfernandovalleychamber.com. If you go to the top right corner, I'm pointing the right corner. So one day I should put the website in the background, the top right corner, and click on Chamber Store and then events. You'll see all of these events. And then I have to do the thing I was showing Jackie earlier if I could find it. And then talked about our resources that we have available. Oh God, now I can't find that piece of paper, Jackie. We were laughing at it earlier because I did a Facebook Live the other day. If you access to capital, need to know pretty much anything that's going on related to business and COVID-19, you can go. Can you see this? Is it working?
Yeah.
It's where your face disappeared.
Okay, sfbresource.com. It doesn't work on here. It works on Facebook Live. Oh, wait, where? I see it. It's kind of like the ghost.
You have to hold it in front of your body, or like.
Oh, see, sfbresource.com. So San Fernando Valley, sfvresource.com. And that is our one-stop parking lot of all business-related, business resource COVID items. So, we continually send you emails about funding and different things going on, and then later on you're going to go through your email saying, darn, where did I see it? You don't have to go back through your email. Just go to this website and we'll have it there. So good job, Fumi, on setting this up. She keeps this updated all the time. So be sure you send her like some virtual flowers or something later to say thanks, or a big round of applause or a big cup of coffee because she stays up late fixing all these things for you. So with that, I think we're going to, after I figure out how to stop the meeting, we're going to end our live stream on Facebook. So thank you everyone who's been watching. And I don't see any more questions in the queue, so please sign up for our events. And I want to thank our speakers today and everyone who, wait, I see one more person. Jennifer Harris, did you have a question? Because you're on the screen. Just want to make sure before we hang up. Okay, Jennifer's not unmuted. So, okay, I want to thank everyone who had questions, and we will see you at Thirsty Thursday tomorrow night. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.